Hey everybody, a couple quick updates. First, the partial Route 66 road trip is in the works. I'm making progress. I am planning it. I'd say I have about 2/3 of the planning done. As soon as I have that all figured out, I will share that with you. I will tell you everywhere that I'd like to go. I'll share the entire itinerary so that hopefully all of us can go on this big road trip in May, next month. So stay tuned for that. The other thing is something I've been thinking about. Some time ago, I got sucked into the rabbit hole of retro TV commercials. And I'll tell you how this happened. It started out just as research. I run a vintage toy review channel, and I was looking at commercials for the things that I was reviewing. But eventually I broadened my scope to look at toy commercials from other eras, from the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, and it really opened my eyes. I learned about a lot of products that were produced in those eras that otherwise I would never have known about. So now when I go toy hunting, when I hit the antique and collectibles shops, I recognize items that otherwise I would not have recognized. It was very educational, but over time, that scope kind of expanded to just retro commercials in general. And I spent really way too much time watching them. Nobody should spend that much time watching them. They're old commercials, for Christ's sake. But I was fascinated by them. And I've been thinking about them lately and thinking about why I'm fascinated by them. And I think I can sort of explain it. Retro TV commercials create a false history. It's not a history of the world as it really was. It's a history of the world as the marketers wanted to portray it. It's a history of how marketers wanted to appeal to people of that time period. The actual products that are being sold are less interesting than the techniques used to try to sell them. And of course, it is also a little bit of a window into the past, right? You get to see the old hairstyles and the old-fashioned things that were, all the rage back, decades ago, but nowadays just seem very out of place. It does kind of let you see what people enjoyed back then and kind of how people behaved back then to an extent. But you have to take all of that with a grain of salt. Again, it's not real. It's a polished version of reality. It's a version of reality that is specifically created to sell stuff. But if you can look at it with that context in mind, I think it's a really fascinating study in human nature and just how things change over time. There is a sort of artistry to the making of these TV commercials, and that's probably not the right word. Artistry is, look, it's not, this is not fine art here. So you might say that it's artless, and yeah, it's probably artless, but there is technique and there is creativity to it. But it is a motivated and mercenary sort of creativity. Nonetheless, it's still kind of a window at us at that time. What were we buying? What were they selling to us that we didn't want to buy? What did things just look like at the time? What kind of cars were we driving? What kind of, clothes were we wearing? I've said this before, that I remember before the world was digital. I remember back when the world was analog, and the world was not better at the time. I do miss that era. I do miss it sometimes. But the world was not better. We're talking about like the Cold War, the AIDS crisis, government corruption, Nixon resigning, Iran-Contra scandal, economic recessions, all this stuff that people kind of forget about. They remember the good old days, but they don't really remember what the good old days were really like. The world was not better in the 80s. The world was not better in the 70s, but there are still some things about it that I miss. And looking back at these sort of these little windows to the past, it gives me a bit of a nostalgia buzz. So in that vein, I did something. I already have a VCR. I was able to find some VHS cassettes that were recorded off of television, just people's home television, that include some old commercials. So I also figured out how to transfer VHS to a digital format. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of these retro commercials, and if this is something that you're not interested in, then skip it. Don't worry about it. Don't watch it then. But if you have any interest in it at all, take a look at it. Don't worry about the product. The products that they're trying to sell, most of them aren't available anyway. It's not like you can go out and buy them. Skip the product, but take a look at the presentation. Take a look at how they are constructed. Take a look at what they are trying to do to appeal to the audience, and take a look at the world that they've constructed. The world where, everyone is wearing the latest fashions and everyone is driving the newer cars, and, that's absolutely not how it really was. But it's a fantasy. Pay attention to the fantasy world that they've constructed. And if you string all of these little fantasy world pieces together, you have a false history of this fantasy timeline. So yeah, I'm gonna do that just kind of as a side thing, because it's fun for me. And you know what? This is my channel, and if it's fun for me, nobody can stop me from doing it. So look for that at some point, or don't. But definitely look for the Route 66 stuff. Yeah, I've had to do some research figuring out where I'm going to stay, how far I want to drive in each day, where to, eat, what roadside attractions can we check out. So working all of that. Should have an update for you very soon. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.